Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Strive podcast. And I'm really happy today to share our guest with you. And I've been looking forward to having this conversation with him for quite a long time. But we both seem to be quite busy these days. I mean, Dubai seems to be a hot topic, and both of us are fairly vested in Dubai these days. But I'm really happy to announce that we've got Suraj Gokani here from Currencies for You. So welcome, Suraj, and thanks for gracing us with your presence on our humble podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And Suraj is the founder of Currencies for You, which is a foreign exchange and international payments provider. I'm sure you can explain it a lot better than I have there. But really glad to have you on board today. And we're going to get stuck into why it's important for business owners, individuals that are making payments internationally. In this case, we're specifically going to focus on Dubai a bit more because that's obviously what our space covers. And we just want to highlight to people how important it is to consider things like efficiency of payments, getting the best rates, what that can actually cost in real money terms. And as we know, there's things like, a property boom in Dubai. So a lot of payments are being transferred across to the UAE right now. And why it's important to work with firms like yourself and really with yourselves. Let's just say it how it is. But it'd be great if you could kick off with a little background on what you guys do and the story so far. And then I suppose we can get into the nitty gritty of today's agenda. Suraj.
Pali, thank you so much for having us. So Currencies for You was born in 2009. So 16 years in the making. It's been a long process. And really the idea behind Currencies for You was to just provide transparency in terms of foreign currency purchases. So a lot of people are making international payments, traditionally using their banks. And the banks, as we know, are notorious for charging hidden fees and sometimes really substantial fees. In the FX space, that was really looking like 3 to 5% they were charging in terms of the exchange rates. Okay. Which is quite a lot. On every £100,000 exchange, they were making between 3 to 5k.
Wow.
Sometimes a little bit wider than that as well. And then they had the cheek to charge you 25 to 40 pounds on top when you're sending your payments over. And that would take 3 to 5 days as well to get to its international destination. True. So Currencies for You was born really with the prime focus of transparency in terms of exchange rates and bringing that cost right down. The time frame in getting funds over and reducing that to some currencies a same day. You can have settlement in a couple of hours, like euro. It's nice and local. On dirhams, it's typically a next day currency, but still much better than waiting 3 to 5 days. But predominantly focusing around the exchange rate saving. That was the biggest thing. Because when you're buying something overseas, if you're buying a property, let's say, for example, in Dubai right now, you're spending, almost £200,000 to £300,000 at minimum, sometimes pushing up to £2 to £3 million equivalent in dirhams. So when you're saving 3%, 5% on those numbers, you're talking savings of, £25,000 to £30,000. That's just on the exchange rate comparison.
Yeah. Okay.
The thing most people get wrong about buying currency is, and talk me through this, you may have done this yourself, if you're making an international payment prior to using us, when you was making an international payment, you'd predominantly wait until the invoice is due and then shop around for the best exchange rate on that day or the day before. What we're educating clients to do is actually speak to an expert much prior, in advance of when you need to make that payment, especially if it's a sizable transaction. The reason being is because if you wait down to the last day to exchange that currency, you've narrowed your window of opportunity in terms of the exchange rates.
Makes sense.
The exchange rates are moving every 2 to 3 seconds, Pali. Now, over the space of a day or 2 days, they could move 3, 4, 5, 6%. When Trump recently spoke about his tariffs, within 48 hours, the currency had dropped by 5%. Now, if you're making a payment of 500,000, you've just been stung for £25,000. You've lost. Without any control. Now, when you're speaking to experts, there's a lot of financial tools that are available to prevent that sort of exposure from happening in the first place.
Okay.
And also a little bit of guidance on the markets to say, we know Trump's going to be addressing the nation with respect to tariffs and what he's looking to impose. it's predominantly not worth taking the risk in waiting. If it was me doing it, I would have done it much prior to waiting for that information, because we knew it's going to be a knee-jerk reaction. Currency markets are obviously going to drop off the back of that because nobody likes uncertainty, and financial markets for sure. You see it come down with global stock markets as well as currencies dropping like a stone. Those things, there are preventative measures there that people are not subject to. But if you wait down to the last minute and then you exchange on that day, you've got no choice but to take the exchange rate where it is at that time. Even if you're shopping around for the best exchange rate, which is good practice, but buying at the wrong time is where the savings are.
So in sort of simplistic terms, let's say, for example, I knew I was likely to transfer, say I was going to buy a property in Dubai and I was going to transfer 200,000, 300,000 pounds across. I can contact Currencies for You, a firm like yourselves, and you'll sort of lock in a rate, or I know just for some of our viewers who aren't used to using companies like yourselves. If you could sort of just walk through what the general process would be to, I suppose, how do we just transfer the money to Currencies for You and they forward it on, or is there sort of some sort of onboarding or account application involved? And like you mentioned earlier, if you want to sort of try to secure a rate well in advance, then what's involved in that part of the process as well? If you could just help us with that, that'd be great.
So there's various tools available, and you mentioned locking in a rate. If you're buying off plan in Dubai right now, you're making stage payments, typically over 24 months, maybe sometimes a little bit longer. That's a huge risk in terms of exchange rate. So you see the property today, you like it, you work it out in accordance with where the market price is right now. Let's say, for example, it's 4.9 dirhams to the pound right now. So every 100,000 is getting you 490,000 dirhams. But if that drops because the UK have got interest rate cuts priced in, and let's say the UK opts to go a little bit more aggressive because inflation is cooling, that exchange rate is going to drop. Now, if that drops to, say, 4.5 dirhams to the pound, your same £100,000 now is only getting you 450,000 dirhams. So automatically you've lost 40,000 dirhams. And this is on an example of 100,000.
£10,000, nearly.
£10,000. So when you're spending £500,000, you've just lost 50,000 pounds worth of
these
currency.
Costs are real. Well, they could really swing your budgets for things in
massively
such a big way.
And it's not in anybody's control now because there's geopolitical events that are happening which nobody can forecast, nobody can foresee, and you don't know how long that's going to influence the market for either. When it's economic data or interest rate decisions, we have an idea, there's a control over that. But like you mentioned, you can lock in an exchange rate. So people who are buying a property, we always ask the question, would you buy something without knowing the price of it? And people are like, no, of course I wouldn't.
Not like that.
But actually you're doing exactly that, because you look at it on the day that you've agreed to buy that property. But then if you haven't booked an exchange rate or locked that in, you're doing just that. And you've now got an exchange rate exposure. Even if you're buying a ready-made property that you can walk into, the completion time is going to be 8 to 12 weeks on the tightest time frame. So you've got 2 to 3 months worth of currency exposure there. If that exchange rate drops by 5%, you can't go and ask for a discount of 5%. It's you that pays the difference.
You've already signed the purchase agreement.
You've signed the purchase agreement. So when you consider that, you can lock in an exchange rate. So you can actually fix today's exchange rate. You don't have to pay for it all up front.
Really?
You pay a 5% deposit only.
Okay.
To hold the exchange rate. And you can lock that in for a period of up to 2 years. So now you've got no exchange rate exposure. Irrespective of what happens to the rates, you've locked in. The same way you and I would do it on a mortgage. We'd fix our mortgage rates. The reason being is because we don't want that fluctuation of what it's going to cost month on month.
Absolutely.
And unlike mortgage rates, currency rates move 3 to 4% very quickly. If you look at situations like the pandemic that we had with COVID, the market lost some 12% straight away because everything come to a halt. If you look at Brexit, the pound against the dollar depreciated by 18% overnight. Overnight. So anybody that didn't hedge was exposed to that.
Trustonomics as well.
Trustonomics. Yeah, there you go.
Without getting too political, but yeah, Liz Truss's budget. I remember
100%. So all of these outside factors are there influencing currency rates. And what we're saying to people is, you may have an idea in your mindset that the market's going to do such and such. It might go up, it might come down. But the reality is there's so many outside indicators that can come in and influence that and change the market direction and sentiment straight away.
Yeah.
So why be exposed to that? If you've committed to buy something, whether you're a business and you know what your spend is likely to be over the next quarter, or whether you're an individual who's buying a property, whether it's investment or to have a lifestyle change and move to the UAE, for example. Once you know you're committed to buy, start looking at the exchange rate straight away.
Straight away.
Don't carry the exposure.
That's great advice. Honestly, Suraj, I think a lot of our viewers are probably thinking, wow, this is really making sense. And, we're talking about thousands of pounds worth of savings here.
We've seen clients that are spending £1 million going into either Europe or the UAE. And when they do that, recently with Trump's comments, they were subject to losing a substantial amount. However, because they locked in exchange rates, they ended up saving almost £50,000 to £60,000, which is much better off in their pocket.
Of course.
That's what we want to do, is put money back in people's pockets.
So, we touched on locking in a rate. Is there a way for somebody to, let's say the currency moves after the time of locking in that rate, maybe in 6 months' time it moves. Has a client got an option to rebook a new rate? I know there might even be some penalties involved in that scenario, I guess, but what would normally happen in that sort of case?
So traditionally, once you've locked in an exchange rate, you're committed to buy that contract.
Okay.
Let's say, for example, your property fell through and you needed to sell it back. There are always options to sell back the currency, but it's at the live market price.
Okay.
So if that's in your favor, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And effectively you're making a profit, but we're not encouraging people to speculate on the market.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But if it's not in your favor and it's gone against you, then there's going to be a cost and a premium to get out of the exchange rate.
Yeah.
In terms of choosing a price that's higher in 6 months' time to the price you locked in, it's not an option. Otherwise, everybody would be doing that.
Yeah, otherwise it just becomes a trade in itself. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
However, if you're locking in a trade, you're not doing it to gamble on the exchange rate, and you're not doing it to predict whether it's going to go up or down.
It's security.
It's security.
Yeah.
You're locking in that trade based on the sheer principle that I like the exchange rate where it is now. It works for me at that price, and I'm prepared to fix that in.
Yeah.
If you negotiated the property sale at, say, 2 million dirhams, you can't then, once you've signed on the dotted line, go back and renegotiate.
Yeah. It's basically touching back on that analogy of a fixed rate mortgage. The interest rate could either go in your favor or against you in the future, but you just want to be in that secure position of knowing what you're budgeting for on a month to month, on a year to year basis. So, but I think it's good for our viewers to understand, the process and how it works. So,
but there's also options where you can lock in an exchange rate that's up to 2 years. Yeah, you've got no exposure to the market. But you might turn around to me, Pali, and say, do you know what, Suraj, I like the exchange rate at 4.9, but I really want to achieve 5 dirhams to the pound. Okay. Is there a way that we can do that? Now, you can put a limit order in the market, okay? Effectively, your desired exchange rate that you want to purchase at. Now, we can place that order into the market, even if it hits at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning whilst we're asleep and you're getting your beauty sleep. Whilst it could be at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and that exchange rate hits, it will automatically buy that currency for you.
Oh, wow.
So you set a price in the market that you want to achieve.
Yeah.
You can also protect yourself on the lower side. You can say to me, Suraj, look, I really want to achieve 5 dirhams to the pound, but I can't afford for it to go any less than 4.7. You can put a stop loss in the market at 4.7. So now from the outset, when you do this currency exchange, your worst exchange rate is going to be 4.7.
Yeah.
You don't want it to go any less than that. It will automatically buy if it falls to that price.
Yeah.
Vice versa, if we do achieve the target price of 5 dirhams to the pound, well, you've got a win-win situation. Because if you and I wake up tomorrow and for whatever reason, the war situation escalates globally, and there's several going on as we speak, or Trump opens his mouth again with some new tariffs, he's woken up on the wrong side of bed, and the market drops on the back of that. Even if we wake up tomorrow and the dirham's at 4.4 dirhams to the pound, because you put a stop loss in, a protection order in the market, automatically it will buy your currency the second it drops through that price. So you've ring fenced your position. And that's the smart way to buy a currency. That really is the smart way.
Makes so much sense. Just listening to you right now, it just seems to be like everyone should be doing this. In terms of the practical side of things, or in terms of how someone would go about doing this, is it something in terms of, do you enable them? Do you give them a tool that they sit in front of and they put these stop losses and limit orders in themselves? Or do they pick up the phone to you? What could you run our viewers through generally what the practical side of managing all this looks like if you use a firm like yourselves as well? Yeah.
So the first stage is opening the account.
Okay.
Whether it's a business account or a personal individual doing transactions themselves. Once the account is open, the client has the option. So we do have a fintech platform.
Okay.
So you can do everything at the ease of your own desktop. You can buy the currency, make payments, set market orders, all at the convenience in doing that in your own time, if you're comfortable and familiar with how the markets work.
Okay.
However, I would say 84 to 85% of our clients still prefer to pick up the phone and say, hi, can you help me? Yeah. This is what I'm looking to do. This is what I want to achieve. And our team are there to handhold everybody from start to finish.
Right.
From setting orders into the market to identifying what their optimum exchange rates are and what the ideal purchase prices are for these people. And more importantly, working within their budget. That's the key fundamental here, is because a lot of people get drawn into just watching the exchange rate and haven't actually converted it back into pounds and how much it's going to cost. So we will do that exercise with the individual to say, if your budget is this, the exchange rate needs to be no less than this.
Yeah.
However, in an ideal scenario, if you could get this as an exchange rate, then your quid's in by X amount.
Right.
And we'll be there to handhold everybody from start to finish, from doing the exchange rate to getting the funds to its destination account. So nobody has to worry.
So that's a real big benefit, knowing that you can actually directly talk to somebody about what your plan is, and to get some, I suppose, feedback off the back of it. I mean, you touched on you need to open an account. Is that simply just opening up like a registration with yourselves? Or is that, when you mean account, do you mean that's an actual bank account that's opened specifically for this purpose in the name of the individual? So I wasn't too sure what the concept of an account in this scenario looks like. Yeah.
So opening an account with us is actually you having a bank account.
Okay.
It's going to be in your name with a tier 1 bank.
Oh, right. Okay.
We are only there to help facilitate transactions and payments on your behalf with your authorization.
The tier 1 bank is an example of what a tier 1?
A high street bank, a household name.
Okay, right. Okay.
There's various liquidity providers that we use. But typically it's a household name.
Right,
and you would open a bank account. It will be in your name. You have full visibility over that.
Okay.
So same as you would have online banking with whoever you're banking with. You go on there, you'll be able to see all of your balances. It's in various different wallets.
Why can't people go and get this sort of bank account themselves then, if it's with the high street providers? Is there something that's ring fenced off from retail sort of banking as such?
Correct.
Just because I'm sure people will be wondering that right now, just hearing that this is provided by household names as well. Yeah.
Correct. So the banks provide the infrastructure.
Okay.
We provide the fintech platform to amalgamate everything into one nice hub, easy to use facility. The banks haven't done that. So if you wanted to do that with your banks, typically our corporate clients, they would have various different bank accounts, whether it's US dollars, euros, dirhams, pounds, and that's a management process. We've got that whole facility in one place on one screen. So when you open your online account with us, you'll be able to view all of the different currency accounts that you have with us. And it's a multi-currency account. So it's one IBAN, one SWIFT code or sort code and account number, but shows you your US dollar wallet, your dirham wallet, your euro wallet, your sterling wallet,
Okay.
and all the other currencies that go with it.
Wow.
So you can view everything there. You can do
Yeah.
the currency exchange. But the only advice I give to everybody, speak to us before you buy a currency.
Yeah.
You could be buying at the worst time.
Sure.
And at the very least, we can let you know that. And if you're buying at the best time, we'll reciprocate that information to you. However, we've got access to a lot more data, economic knowledge, and events that are coming up where we can just educate you and support you to say, this is happening tomorrow, this is happening the day after. The likely outcome is this, if this is the decision that's made.
Yeah.
And that can just help you time the transaction a lot better, and hopefully put money back in your pocket.
Okay. Wow, this is super interesting, I have to say. So I just want to touch on something I've noticed from like your marketing material on your website. You mentioned that you're regulated, and I think our viewers would love to know more about what does that mean, because if we're talking about quite large sums of money, moving around. How can viewers feel sort of that feeling of assurance that this is a controlled, regulated environment, and what sort of protection, if any, if you could just elaborate, please, on what that means and what you guys have to comply with in order to operate in such a fashion, as well.
So being regulated is the most important aspect. All of the transactions that we do are regulated through regulated banks and providers and liquidity. Now, if you're doing a transaction with Currencies for you, your funds are 100% safe. The reason we can say that so confidently is because under the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, who effectively police and govern the industry, anything to do with finance, they will ensure that we are compliant with onboarding individuals and companies.
Okay.
Same process I open in a bank account, utility bill, passport, ID verification, etc.
Like KYC, basically.
KYC. And the reason for doing your transfers and understanding the source of funds. We are policed in that fashion. So we have to provide everything ourselves. On top of that, the safety aspect comes in because we have to legally safeguard client funds. So all of the banks that we're working with and the liquidity providers that we use have segregated client accounts. So your funds are never being sent to me. Your funds are never being sent to Currencies for you. They're being sent to regulated, safeguarded accounts, either in your name or the institution's name as a collection account. The same way as when you're completing on a property transaction, you will use a solicitor or notair's safeguarded client account. It's the same process that we have to adhere to. And that's by law. We have regular spot checks and audits that take part as well to ensure that we're doing this properly. All of our lines are recorded for this. The web terminal and the client platform is two-factor authentication. So the utmost security has been implemented into this to safeguard client funds.
Got it. Okay, wow. So, I mean, you're talking about, your funds being 100% secure, FCA regulatory approval, better rates. I'm really surprised why so many people aren't aware of these services. I think maybe, I think especially people, because we know in Dubai, the property market's been hot for quite a number of years now. I would say we're getting to year 3 or 4, and it's been growing, and a lot of investors have been putting money across. And I know they've just been transferring money from their high street bank to make these payments for purchasing property over there. And I'm just thinking that, I wish they'd known about your services a lot earlier. And I suppose this is one of the reasons why we're doing this conversation as well. But wow, I'm really fascinated now about how much upside there is here with what you guys are doing.
It happens. People still today prefer to use sometimes their own high street bank because they feel they have a relationship. And that's fine, even if they do want to use their high street bank, speak to us and we'll tell you how to get a good rate out.
Okay.
So we never pressure anybody to use us.
Yeah.
But that's the reason we're in business, because high street banks can't provide the service, the strategy, the tools, the financial tools, like we spoke about locking in exchange rates or limit orders and stop losses. They don't have those tools.
Okay.
And that's something that we do have.
Yeah.
Going back to security, we've got clients that are holding substantially large balances with us as opposed to their own bank accounts because they're only covered up to a certain amount with their own bank accounts.
Right.
So they hold large balances with us
Yeah.
because it's a segregated client account.
Mm-hmm.
But I think banks also don't want to be in this space. They're quite comfortable to allow experts and specialist companies like us to go on and do our business the way we do, because we're very fine-tuned in this sector.
Yeah.
The banks provide a range and a basket of different services, from mortgages, insurances, pensions, etc. This is one aspect I think that they're quite happy to let the institutions take care of, and knowing that they've got peace of mind that the FCA are policing the industry.
Right.
And compliance has only got stronger and stronger, and it's going to continue to as well.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I just want to swing the conversation around to businesses a bit more specifically rather than individuals. So in terms of, if, say, for example, I'm running a business in the UK and I need to make a large payment to Dubai, I might have a supplier there or of the sort for whatever reason. Is this available to businesses as well as individuals? And if so, is the compliance check and the KYC fairly different for say a limited company to open an account with yourselves or an FX account? Yeah,
it differs slightly because there's ongoing payments to be done. Typically, somebody buying a property is buying a property, and then they may not necessarily need to use the facility again.
Okay.
Of course, they can, and the account will be open.
Yeah.
But once they've bought that property, they will only be sending smaller denominations back and forth for lifestyle purposes.
Yeah.
Businesses will have a very different flow of funds. So they will have regular large payments going out. And therefore, the strategy comes into that. Now, from a compliance perspective, there is ongoing monitoring that's done. So random spot checks. So if you're importing stock from, let's say, China, as an example, you'll have an invoice for what you're purchasing. So compliance may request that document from time to time to say, hey, we know you're purchasing this. Can you provide the invoice to support this payment?
Okay.
Other than that, it's the same onboarding.
Okay.
So the shareholders would go through the identification and verification checks at the initial stages.
Okay.
If anything changes, of course, you'd need to notify us. We have systems in place that it would detect that anyway, and we would approach you to say, hey, can you now provide this documentation? But I wouldn't say it's very stringent. Yes, there's ongoing monitoring. It doesn't take away from the normal business relationship, and it's not a headache as such. It's just a part and parcel of doing business internationally.
Yeah.
And every country has their own governance and laws behind that. So wherever you're doing business, as a business, you will know already. Your bank's probably asking the same questions anyway.
True. Yeah. I mean, the high street banks will probably ask even more.
I would say more, yeah,
as well. So I think that makes sense. So,
we do try and work with the institutions. So once we know what the nature of the business is, the frequency of payments, the destination those payments are going to as well, we will upfront have an idea of what documentation is going to be requested anyway.
Sure.
So we will try and preempt as much of that information up front to avoid the headache of having to go back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. Now this is very insightful indeed. So one hot industry, and I'm not even sure if firms like yourselves are able to support any of this stuff, is crypto.
Yep.
And we do come across clients who are looking to move to Dubai because there's no income tax, no capital gains tax, so they're thinking of moving out there, managing their portfolio and trading crypto or investing in crypto from the UAE. And some of them are trying to, they struggle with onboarding, from US dollar or GBP into crypto. Is that something that your firm helps with, or firms like yourselves are getting involved in? And what's your general outlook on that space? And what do you think the general outlook is from, I suppose, a regulatory perspective in the future? And don't worry, no one's going to hold you to this. We're just having a casual chat. So I would love to get your thoughts on that industry at the moment. Yeah.
So crypto is becoming a big space for various different reasons. Some people are just trading crypto to try and make a quick profit. And some people are actually using crypto now as a payment vehicle to trade internationally. The issue with crypto is it doesn't have the same regulation that fiat currencies do. And that's where the transparency comes in. From a compliance perspective, it's very much frowned upon still. There's some countries that are more receptive to take crypto as opposed to others. But now it's becoming more and more frequent that people are asking about this. Yes, we do provide it and we can assist.
One thing I did want to talk to you about was just extending on the conversation about businesses is, with these, can you highlight any specifics where you've seen businesses really be affected by not locking in exchange rates, where businesses have obviously need to do continuous payments as well? I'd like to sort of so you could give a real world example to the viewers. I think that would be really useful.
There's one that really sticks out for me. So when the pandemic happened, the exchange rates dropped by some 20%. Now, to put that in monetary value, there was a business that was exchanging 10 million sterling equivalent per annum. That same 10 million now that they were spending was costing them 12 million, 2 million more because of the exchange rate depreciation.
Right.
And that had a knock-on effect in terms of inflation, because it became a question within the business. Are they going to absorb that loss by not managing their FX risk, or are they going to pass that on to the client? The argument then was internal, and we spent a lot of time with the FD and the CEO on this, to almost inflate their prices by 10% and have consumers pay 10% of it, and they were prepared to absorb 10% of the cost. And this was because they had one view on how the markets would go. And we tried to encourage them to say there is still a risk to the downside if you're not protecting yourself. But the view was that they thought the markets were going to appreciate, and it would actually be better off for them not to lock in. And this is why I say, like I said to you earlier, it's not about predicting whether the market's going to go up or down. It's about knowing where the price is now, and does that price become sustainable for the continuation of business, and fixing in that, because you're hedging yourself from exposure, from downside and further risk. And this was a prime example of that, because it was, as you can imagine, not a pleasant conversation to be having when a business is now paying 2 million more per annum for the same goods that they were the year previous.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they always say markets don't like unpredictability; they like stability. So, yeah, I think that does sort of make sense and hits home, quite well for businesses.
Well, this is why inflation persists in the UK. From the days of Brexit, when we first had that, we've never recovered from that initial spike in inflation, because the pound dropped significantly in value. It meant that importing goods from overseas became more expensive, which meant the people importing, the businesses,
pass the cost on.
Were passing the cost on to the consumer. And we're still seeing that today, and we're seeing it with energy prices and everything else that goes with it, the price of oil. All of these factors have a knock-on effect to the economy, and ultimately that will dictate what happens to the price of the currency.
Wow, makes sense as well. Moving on slightly, we have to talk about this because it's just a hot topic with a lot of people. So we're going to touch on crypto just briefly. We do work with people that have moved to Dubai who are investing in crypto, want to trade their crypto or invest in crypto while they're non-residents of the UK, because obviously when they become tax residents of Dubai, there's zero income tax and capital gains tax. And a lot of these guys are quite young. It's the first time they're coming into some large sums of money as well. But one of the questions we get asked consistently, and I don't know if firms like yourselves can help, or if you can just shed some insight on the overall sort of view from above, as it were, from the regulatory authorities on this space. But are there ways and that your companies like yourselves can help with onboarding fiat into crypto in the market? And what's your general thoughts on this, and what's the general outlook on this from the people in power, as it were, like the banks and the compliance authorities?
Well, I can't say crypto's not becoming a big question, because if you look over the last few years, it's blown up exponentially. People have made a lot of profit from it, but it's extremely volatile. As much as we're talking about the gains, people have lost thousands just trying to trade cryptocurrencies and make a profit. However, it is becoming a payment vehicle, and it's something that we have adopted. We can help clients that want to trade in cryptocurrency as well as stable coins. And it's becoming a new payment method now. Countries like the UAE are very receptive when it comes to accepting USDT or Bitcoin as such as a payment method.
Okay.
So we can assist and help clients purchase the crypto and make payments in the digital wallets.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The issue with crypto, and here's where I think there's still a detachment, the regulatory framework behind it. And this is something that globally, and UAE especially, are trying to become a hub for crypto, as is the US. And they're trying to create the framework from a regulatory perspective to actually make this a full-time payment vehicle. But it's not there yet. There is also the conversation coming up about digital dollar, digital dirham. These are new payment methods that are going to be, and they will have much more backing because it's done through the central bank. So it's going to be a safer way of transferring funds. With crypto, because there's not enough regulation behind it and governance and policing, compliance don't like it everywhere. Global compliance bodies do not like it. And the reason for that is because there's no transparency to where those funds have originated from. And ultimately, everything to do with international payments is always about the source of funds. Who is the UBO of that money? Where is it derived from? Is it from profit in a business? Is it from savings from an individual perspective, through income? Or is it done through money laundering? Now, previously, cryptocurrencies had a really bad name because a lot of people that were doing illicit business would use those channels. For example, Bitcoin was the first one, and they would use those methods of payment to disguise the original source of funds. That's where the issue still stays, is because there needs to be more transparency and governance behind this. But now that the blockchain technology is started to be implemented and complement the cryptocurrencies, that transparency is evolving. And I do think over the next 2 to 3 years that the central banks that are bringing out their own digital coins and payment methods, that the digital dirham is being spoken about more and more at the moment. I think the compliance aspect will be there because it's done through a blockchain network, which will be completely transparent. So you'll always know the ultimate source of funds. But the crypto space, yes, it's growing. There's been a lot of noise around it. We've seen the wins, if you like, and people have made a lot of money, but we've also heard about the losses.
Of course.
Because it's not regulated, it's still a frowned upon payment method. However, it's becoming more and more prominent. And I think the regulation is starting to catch up with that now. I think people are looking at this as a serious payment vehicle. It's not going away. All the crypto critics, when it initially started, were like, oh, it's not going to last. It's going to be out within 2 to 3 years. They were wrong. And we said they were wrong at the time. And it is going to become something. It just needed the regulatory framework, which is happening now. So I think you're going to see more and more of this over the next 2 to 5 years. And crypto becomes an everyday payment method.
Okay. Interesting thoughts there. And obviously you do work closely with the UAE and Dubai, and in terms of, I'm guessing quite a lot of your work is around the property space and people investing in property over there. And so I just want to get away from sort of payments, I would love to get your thoughts on what you think has fueled that property investment sort of spike in the UAE from the feedback you've had from your clients. What are their motivations? And we're not going to speculate on future projections or anything along those lines, but I know you're a big advocate for the UAE and obviously how they operate and how it's growing. But from the feedback you've had from your clients, what is it that's fueled that huge interest in property? Because whenever you get insights from Dubai, you see that the number one purchasing country for UAE property is normally the UK, or at least in the top 3. What is it that makes it so attractive, in your opinion?
I've had the pleasure of working with the UAE for the last 20 years now, and I've seen it evolve from the desert that it was to this supernatural infrastructure that lives there now. The buildings, the lifestyle, everything that you see today, there's a lot of hard work that's gone into that. But it all comes down to the philosophy I've got very close friends there that have been there for some 20 years now.
Okay.
And the ideology behind it was always tax-free environment. People should retain what they earn, but we would like them to spend here in the UAE.
Okay. Yeah.
And to do that, you had to bring everything that the Western world has to the UAE to allow them to spend it there because they want to. So this is a story that's been happening for some 20 years, and the evolution of it has been phenomenal. And I think they've got it right. The tax-free environment, and I know that there's corporation tax that's implemented, VAT, but in comparison to where the VAT levels are and tax levels are globally, is much lower.
Yeah.
And that's a huge attraction for people. But they have gone and delivered. They have provided the infrastructure. They have provided the safety. They have provided the lifestyle. Who doesn't want to be there? The heat is sometimes a little bit hard, but I think people are becoming accustomed to that. The friends that I have there and family that I have there, over the summer months when it gets hot, they'll go back to wherever they came from. So you mentioned the UK. The UK is a big advocate of the UAE because the offering is so much. And I think that initial framework of the tax-free environment is a huge attraction. But like I said, the UAE has delivered in terms of what it's put out there in terms of buildings, lifestyle, infrastructure, the safety aspect. You can eat out in the UAE for £30 a head or £3,000 a head, depends on where you want to go. Yeah. So it does cater for everybody. And I think if you look at the numbers over the last 3 years alone, the UAE was number 27 globally in terms of GDP per capita, so the growth of the country. Now sits at number 19. So you can see the growth is there. The whole world is talking about the UAE. And this year alone, 11,000 millionaires in January left the UK to go to the UAE. That's a staggering number.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if they all went to the UAE, but it was 11,000 millionaires, which, and we did cover this in one of the previous podcasts as well. There's lots of reasons behind that. I think obviously tax is normally the biggest driver in a lot of those things, and general outlook. But just touching on sort of growth and economic growth, I think the OBR adjusted the growth forecast for the UK down from around 2% to 1%. And I think Dubai is currently delivering about 5.1%.
Correct.
So if you compound that over, say, 5 years and those figures stayed the same, you're talking about a huge spread in terms of between the two, in terms of the difference in growth over, say, a 5-year period as well. So I think that sort of says it all at the moment in terms of why Dubai is now really being taken seriously, I think, as well.
And the UAE has a trade surplus. When you look at the trade balance numbers, it has a surplus. It's an exporting country. They provide everything there. They've got very good relationships with its counterparts to bring in goods cheap and ship that to the Western world now. And that's growing exponentially. They're trying to come away from relying on oil and commodities. And this is only going to help the economy because now it's about tourism as well. And we're seeing the growth trajectory there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the population there is around something like 8 million people, but the amount of people that visit is above 20 million a year.
Wow.
So that's why I always feel so busy. So it's not, the traffic isn't just caused by the 8 million people living there. There's so much in terms of traffic, travel, footfall for business, commerce, and for leisure and tourism as well. So I don't think that's going to slow down anytime soon. Our business is not slowing down at the moment, and we're sort of inundated and recruiting heavily at the moment, trying to just manage the inquiries and the capacity issues as well. So yeah, Dubai has become really, really interesting. In terms of, say, just the property transactions that people are doing, and obviously they're using your services to get the best rates and make payments efficiently to developers or agents in Dubai. What have you seen as like an average sort of purchase value that most people are going for at the moment from the UK? Because you're obviously able to sort of see the sort of level of sort of currency that they're looking to lock in or transfer. What's your sort of opinion there? That would be interesting, I think, to know as well.
Okay, so from a property perspective alone, if I think about the investors, you've even got smaller investors that are entering the market now. And interesting conversation I had just yesterday with somebody. They wanted to get on the property ladder in the UK, but can't afford to because of where interest rates are and what the longevity looks like from the property market in the UK. They have now taken a view to go and invest in the UAE.
Wow, no way.
Which shocked me, but it is something that I've been hearing more of. And I would say that the entry level of people getting into the UAE market, that 200,000 mark to buy something, one bed off plan.
We're talking sterling.
Sterling. Yeah. And that's happening more and more.
Okay.
But I would say the average of what people are spending is between £500,000 to £750,000 going into the UAE.
Yeah.
So some 2.5 to 3 million dirhams as an average spend, because these are families looking to relocate from a lifestyle perspective. So wherever they're buying something similar to what they're getting here in the UK, and it's a straight change. But then I would say there's 15 to 20% of our clients that already have presence in the UAE. They may already have a main residence there, but are going in to invest in the new projects that are coming up in some of the new cities off plan. And those prices are £1 to £2 million sterling.
Right.
So, 5 to 7 million dirhams. It's a staggering number.
And I'm guessing that's attached to a payment schedule over time of maybe 24 to 36 months, I guess.
Yeah, all the off-plan properties, payment schedule. So again, most people are just locking in their exchange rates because the issue that you have with the UAE right now is it's pegged, the dirham is pegged to the US dollar.
Yeah.
And as we know, we've said it a few times that, it's an erratic economy right now in the US. Growth is slowing. There is an unemployment concern. There is also a risk as to what's going to happen with interest rates over there. They haven't done anything for a couple of months now, and they haven't given no clear forward guidance as to what's going to happen going forward, because it does depend on how inflation pans out and the job data. But I think there is this ongoing conversation about de-dollarization and the dirham being de-pegged from the USD, because I actually think the dirham is too strong. In fact, the UAE central bank said this as well, that it was too strong, the dirham. And actually, if you have a weaker dirham, it will bolster the exports. It will really boost sales. And it's only going to drive more people into the UAE. So it's a win-win for the UAE if they do manage to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that trade surplus will just get
skyrocket.
Bigger and bigger. Yeah, absolutely. No, fantastic. I'm just checking my notes here to make sure we've covered everything off. I think we've gone through quite a lot in this session. I think it's been really, really insightful. So I think we'll just wrap it up on, I suppose, how do people get working with you? How do they get in touch? How quickly could they potentially get an account open with yourselves? If you could just share some of that with us, that would be fantastic.
Of course. I think the most important thing is reach out to us if you are making international payments. Even if you don't use us, it's not a problem. We're more than happy to help you. If we're going to save you money, even if you're using whoever, we sleep very well at night, just saving clients the money. But you can open an account at www.currenciesforyou.com. Feel free to get in touch, reach out. We'll walk you through the onboarding process, which is straightforward and very easy to do. And then from that point onwards, we'll help you and manage your currency exposure, whether you're buying an investment property and it's going to be on a payment schedule where you've got 2 years worth of payments to make, or you're relocating for your family, and we can help you and guide you in terms of what's happening with the currency rates. And like I said, there's various tools available. So locking in the rate, like you said, or setting your ideal price. But at the very least, reach out to us so we can guide you from the currency perspective, hopefully hold your hand and make your dream come true if you are moving to the UAE.
No, brilliant. No, thanks, Suraj. This has been Very, very insightful. I'm really glad that we got the chance to finally sit down. So guys, we'll put a link to Currencies for You in our description on YouTube as well. So, feel free to go ahead and click on that and learn more about what you guys are doing as well. We're, very grateful that we're going to be partnering up as well, and hopefully, bring some of these benefits to some of our clients at Strive as well. And I'm looking forward to doing a few more of these. It's going to be an interesting period geopolitically, and with Donald Trump, changing his mood, depending on what side of the bed he gets out from. I think this is going to be a very interesting period, and it'd be great to get your ongoing insights into, upcoming changes that could be occurring.
Of course, be
in the
happy to
global
help.
economy.
And if you are a business in the UAE or looking to move to the UAE and take your business there, definitely get in touch, because you're going to have frequent payments happening. And you need to manage that currency exposure. Otherwise, the markets are going to remain volatile for some time.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Thanks, Suraj.
Thank
Until
you
the
for
next
having
time.
us.
I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.